Thanks for joining this session. My name is Jonathan Landin, and the title of my talk is Delivering Targeted and Relevant Online Information. So I'll be talking about content delivery of technical documentation and the importance of making sure that the content that our users access is relevant to them in terms of their situation, their product model, their product version, their user role, etc. So I'll be talking about what I mean by relevant content delivery. So what can it be? And the importance of doing it. So why should we do it? And then give you one example of how relevant content delivery can be achieved, focusing on the end users and focusing on information architecture. So to give you an idea what I mean by relevant content delivery, let's assume that I am an operator or a driver of a forklift. So this is an industrial vehicle. This is a configured product. So of course it has a serial number. And as an operator, what I would then like to do is to maybe grab my phone. I will scan the digital product passport and hopefully enter a content delivery portal, which acts as kind of the homepage for this individual, this product. So it contains the content that is relevant for me as an operator and only the content relevant for this particular configuration. So I could, for example, say I only want to see the instructions, the task topics. So what I see here is the standalone task topics for the operator for this particular product. Let's move the phone here. Let's take another example. Let's say that I am a service engineer. And this is another forklift. This is not the same configuration. So it has another set of options configured. So in this case, I would scan the digital product passport for the service engineer. I might want to do predictive or corrective maintenance. I would enter the same content delivery portal. But in this case, I only see, when I filter and search, get the content relevant for the service engineer for this particular individual. Let's see if we can see that this product has a number of components configured. So I don't end up finding or reading content that doesn't apply to my situation. And of course, we can take this a step further to also engage with a certain component on the product. So if I want to get as a service engineer, the inspection instructions for a particular component on the product. So I hope you get the idea what I mean by relevant content delivery. And I would like to also take the opportunity to talk about something called a digital product passport, as you've seen the name, and it also says here. So a digital product passport is something that is required by the European Union. If you want to distribute or sell a product in EU, each manufacturer individual needs to have a digital product passport in the years to come. This regulation came into effect last year, and it seems that it will apply to more and more type of products, also industrial products. And the purpose of a digital product passport is to support or give users relevant content for them to make green choices. So it contains information about the carbon footprint, where the product is manufactured, how to replace a spare part, how to recycle things, decommission, content that is needed to make green choices and to keep a product in operation for as long a time as possible. And of course, it has to do with lowering the impact on our climate. So what I'll be talking about here is of course, related to being able to provide a digital product passport as such. So let's move this thing away. Okay, let me just introduce myself shortly. And we have to make this work. So, okay. So I'm a technical communicator, just like most of you. And I've been working a lot with XML-based content management. And of course, for 30 years ago, XML wasn't even the case. So we started off with HTML back in the days. I consider myself being an information architect, looking at putting the users in the center and trying to discuss and figure out and provide guidelines and rules for how to know which content we need to create for users and how to organize, structure, and classify that content. I'm really interested in topic-based authoring, so I was participating in the development of Beta 1.2 back in the days for a short period of time. It was a lot of fun. But I'm very interested in user behavior, how users search and read, and what it means to understand something we read, reading comprehension, which is very relevant for technical documentation. So a lot of academic studies about users' behavior, and I'm currently part-time affiliated researcher at the university in Sweden. And I work for a company called Excosoft, and we are a software and service provider. We have a CCMS and a content delivery portal, one that you saw in the examples called Topic Finder. Yeah, and of course, our services revolve around content management. Okay, good. So why do we need to make sure that users always have access to relevant content? Maybe it's obvious, but let's look into it. So in this presentation, I would say I have a human-centered design perspective on things, meaning to put users and the human behind the user in center. So all the decisions we make regarding the tools we select, what content we create and write and manage, and how we organize that needs from this perspective to be based on knowing who the users are. Of course, as technical communicators, that's what we do. So that's very important. So a user who is in a particular situation and getting stuck because they don't have the knowledge of using a product or doing a task, I see them as an active individual who are, of course, themselves responsible for their search journey. They decide when they start to search, they decide what information they need, and they decide what they think is relevant. I don't view users as a passive individual sitting and waiting for someone to push relevant content on me. So the active user today has access to so much content. But in a particular situation, it's only a fraction of this content that is relevant for the user. So the green page here, that instruction, the rest is not relevant. So this idea of delivering relevant content means to help the user to exclude, hide everything that is not relevant because it applies to other situations, other type of products, users, tasks, etc. But of course, users who doesn't have the luxury of getting content filtered, they have themselves to figure out where the relevant content is. And I usually say that finding content is not difficult. Just Google or ask a chatbot. What is difficult is to find or to do the judgment of what I find, how it's related and relevant to my situation. My experience is that's where the user's challenge is. So how do I know if this piece of content I find is the relevant one? So a user who is getting stuck here and needs an instruction for doing something, make Google, find some results. Well, no, that doesn't apply. It's not relevant. They may ask a generative chatbot who's been trained on all this content. Well, it hallucinates, not relevant. User might look up a PDF, look at the table of content. No, that's the wrong one. Look at the print manual in the index, flip through it, and yeah, maybe he or she is lucky and is finding the correct page. So from my experience, when talking to users, I often see users ending up like this. So have you been in this situation? Maybe not as angry as this, but this is not what we want as content strategists and information architects and technical communicators. Of course, we want to help our users to accomplish their goals. That's what our intention, our design intention. So I think it's important to understand this journey and where the user's challenges are when trying to find relevant content. So I prepared a user journey. I would like to take you through a journey and we can spot and try to find the steps and the processes where difficulties arise. So for this user journey, here we have two users. So I have prepared as an example. I'm going to focus on Ben here. He's a service engineer. Could be a she as well, but happens to be a Ben in this case. And they both work at the warehouse. This warehouse is storing boats. So they're using forklifts. And this journey begins when the warehouse company decides to purchase a new forklift. Let's get a new forklift. So they head over to the manufacturer of forklifts called Elimate. And Elimate offers 4 different product models. They have a small forklift, medium forklift, a large forklift, and an extra large forklift. Pretty cool, huh? So this is the ordering page. So when the warehouse orders the forklift, this is sort of the ordering sheet. And these forklifts, they are industrial products. They're not consumer products. You just go in and grab one. You have to configure. So they are configured to order. So in the case of Elimate's forklifts, you can select what type of fork you want to use. There are 4 different types of forks, depending on the application. So there is a boat fork, anti-slip, drum, and coil fork. And the extra large forklift, you can select of one of these 4. Then there is different types of batteries. You have 4 different battery capacities, and the extra large has the 3 most powerful. You can select only one. For the forklift that has a cabin, the large and the extra large, you can select if you want a radio, if you want some interior lights, and also an airbag. Isn't it cool to have an airbag on a forklift? So the warehouse decided, yeah, let's go for the extra large, the most powerful battery. Yeah, we need a radio, interior lights, and airbag. This is configured to order, so it's manufactured and sent to the warehouse. And later on, the service engineer, he needs to check the battery condition. And since this is a new vehicle, he doesn't know how to do it. So he starts a journey to try to find assistant. And he would like actually to read the print manual, but there was no print documentation supplied with the forklift because this forklift was delivered in the EU. And according to the new machinery regulation, print documentation is no longer mandatory. So you can supply online. And this regulation came into effect, I think it was decided upon last year, but it comes into effect 2027. So we are a little bit ahead of time here. So there is no print documentation. So the service engineer, he goes over to the Elimate documentation library and he tries to find the instruction on how to check the battery condition. So he discovers that okay, there's 3 different types of publications for each forklift model. There's a technical manual, service manual, and operator manual. And they come in different localized languages. And all these are valid for model year 2027. And then we have equal amounts of publications for model year 2024. So, and they differ, of course, because in the model year 2025, some new features were added. So he starts to pick an information source. So he selects this one here. and maybe you can't read at the back, but it says the technical manual, and he looks at it and says, technical manual, no, it's not a technical manual. It must be a service manual. Yes, this is the one. But then it says, but this is for the large forklift. I had the extra large, so it must be this one. Okay, this is the one. Yes, it opens it up. Perfect. And this could be a PDF or HTML publication online. He looks at the table of content, or he does a free text search, and he finds a couple of pages, and he looks at them and says, this is not relevant, not relevant, not relevant, not relevant. Okay, here it is. Checking the ELE 751 battery condition. Perfect. This is the instruction I need. So he starts to read to comprehend, and it says the green LED will illuminate because there's a battery protection enabled. So he looks at his forklift here, but there's no green LED. Seems to be a mismatch. Instruction doesn't seem to match the product. So after a while he gives up. He goes home. It's Friday afternoon. What the heck, I don't care. So what happened here? How could this go wrong? It seemed to work very well. Well, remember that the configured forklift had the most powerful battery, which is the EV561S-571 battery. And he was reading the ELE 75. It's the wrong instruction. And this visualizes or tries to convey that as users are active and they decide what they think is relevant. Of course, a user can think something is relevant, which is not. Well, the expert will say, this is the wrong instruction. But hey, how can a user know? There's no expert there telling them that this was wrong. So users can act on irrelevant content without knowing it. And that, of course, leads to issues, damages, safety, and efficiency issues. So let's try to, it was this topic that was the relevant one. Let's try to summarize this journey. So the first challenging step is to find the relevant information source, either if it's a chatbot or a PDF or HTML publication. And especially for industrial products where there's a lot of different configurations or even customized, there can be a lot of content to different types of publications. So first one is selecting the relevant information source. The next one is to express the information need to the selected source. And the information need is a very interesting concept. I view it as a cognitive phenomenon. And this is challenging because the reason to why a user, in this case the service engineer, got stuck is because he lacked domain knowledge and knowledge about the terminology of the domain. That's why he couldn't use the product. That also means that he lacks the knowledge to express and verbalize the information need. So if I ask a chatbot, the thing doesn't work, help me. And the chatbot says, can you be a little bit more specific? No, that's why I've turned to you. And especially for the novice user, this seems to be really challenging. A novice user might not even know what they need. They don't even know what content exists. So it's complete confusion. And a lot of the things we design today, we kind of assume that users are literate in expressing and verbalizing their information need, which, might not be the case. Let's say that the user could express their information need as a prompt or as keywords. There's something is returned, search results, a page they have found, or a generative answer. Then, of course, they have to do assessment. Is this really relevant? Is this hallucination, or is this applying to something else? And it seems that in many cases, users would rely and say, yeah, this seems relevant, and they start to use it and ending up maybe damaging the equipment. Let's say, Hannah, the user do the relevance judgments and says, yeah, this is the piece of content that I think I need. And the first step is to the reading comprehension, to read it, to shape a mental model, to understand what the text and the images are trying to say, and then turn it into action. So these 4 steps can be more or less challenging depending on the type of user. the complexity of the product. But it seems that especially for beginner users who use complex industrial products, this seems rather challenging. And doing this auto-filtering of content that is not relevant is of course not making these 4 steps 100% bulletproof. But it's a help on the way to increasing the user experience in that sense. Okay. So, how can we then support the user to make these 4 steps a bit more easier and helping the user not ending up reading something that is not relevant? Well, let's recap what relevant content delivery can be. Again, we have taking these forklifts as an example. And all the content that is available for these models can be visualized like this, can be either be topics or publications. So relevant content delivery means that when the user engages with a product, we can help the user to remove everything that is not relevant. To make serial number specific documentation, for example. And this approach is, I think, interesting from many, many perspectives. One is for supporting the younger generation. Me, myself, I don't have a problem, well, reading a 500-page PDF. Well, kind of. But I would see my kids, no, they would never do it. They would expect content to be available and personalized the same way as you have electricity in your outlet and you have water in your kitchen. They won't read a 500-page manual. So to prepare for the young generation, this is kind of important. And we also see this from regulatory perspectives. So, for instance, in the European Union, we have this digital product passport, which is a regulation. It's mandatory if you want to sell, distribute a product in the EU. In the near future, you must supply also a passport. And also the machinery regulation also puts requirements on relevant content delivery for safety reasons. So this is also kind of, from my perspective, demanded also from authorities. But hey, we haven't talked about AI. Of course, we have to talk about AI also. And that's also a relevant thing, because this relevant subset of content can be used when augmenting the LLM. So let's say a user who prompts a general LLM. What we are looking into when we are kind of evaluating and learning also is to use semantic search. So this is vectorized, and the chunks or the topics that are the response from a semantic search, we use them, send them to the LLM to augment so that the answer is hopefully as good as it can be in this situation. So it's reducing the hallucinations. We don't want to send chunks from content valid for other product models, so that the generated answer would contain a mix-up of content from different types of models. So we are learning how we can augment using semantic vector search so that the generated answer is valid for, or let's say that the answer is relevant for user situation. So that the content answer becomes, well, relevant. So okay, so that's a recap of what relevant content delivery can be. So what do we need to do to achieve this? I open up 3 requirements. First of all, that content is written and structured. So it comes down to information architecture. This is so important. I mean, it all starts here, knowing what content do we need to create and write. This is my special interest. What are the kind of frames and ideas that we need to put in place to know what content do we write? What content do users need? Do we need to create a lot of conceptual topics? Why? Who is reading them to do what? Do we need to create overviews? Why? Who is reading them when to do what? So what type of content do we need to create for which users in which situations? That is for support learning. From my perspective, content needs to support users to learn. But given that we have idea of what content users need, this can be packaged and organized in different ways. I will talk about two perspectives. One is the book paradigm and the standalone topic design. Next is content needs some metadata, of course, and we need to have some kind of way of filtering content at the time the user is viewing the content. So let's look at this one. This is very interesting. So let's start with the book paradigm. And of course, the book paradigm we're all familiar with. So content is organized in a hierarchy. We have a chapter, subsection, sub-subsections. There's a table of content. In this way of structuring content, we use our data map and our data topics to organize them. And of course, it has a lot of benefits. I would say that the user who is not in a work task and not in a hurry, but have some time to read up and maybe want to create a big picture mental model of the product and the content. And then the book structure, the book paradigm is quite nice. And also the context, the hierarchy provides a context. So if I'm reading a specific subsection, the parent titles provides a context for me to understand what a specific subsection is all about. So it has a lot of benefits, but I would say for auto-filtering or for removing things that are not relevant, like this section, I said that this topic needs to be hidden because it doesn't apply to the user's product model and situation. But probably also we need to hide content in the upper parent levels as well. So my experience is that this way of organizing content doesn't lend itself kind of very well to auto-filtering. And here I'm talking about filtering when the user is viewing the information. I'm not talking about conditionalizing content in the CCMS to publish order-specific documentation. So this is to make the content dynamic as the user is viewing it. So an alternative is the standalone topic design. So a standalone topic design, what a standalone topic can be. I'm trying to visualize it here. So users go to the CDP, enters some keywords, gets search results. Each of these boxes here is a standalone topic. They are not organized in any data map, so there's no table of contents per se. So each topic is self-contained. Users can use filtering and opening up. So for a topic to be standalone, my experience is that there's a number of criteria that needs to be met. I don't know, probably you heard about the every page is page one concept. So it has to stay in one level, and it has to conform to one information type. We cannot mix instructions and descriptions. But one very important aspect is the context. So if these boxes here represents 5 standalone topics, each of them will then need to have context, which is this content you can see here. So each standalone topic needs to establish its context. And that's for many purposes. Of course, one is to help the user when making relevance judgments. And I usually use a metaphor. Let's say you are a skydiver. You put on a blindfold, someone takes you to the airplane, you go off, and then you jump. And then when you land, you rip off the blindfold. What happens? Of course, you're looking for clues. Where am I? And the context is those road signs, providing the context. So the user is landing here wondering, okay, what is this? If there would be a title and then the procedure, you would say, what's this? I need this context to understand if this is relevant to my need and my situation. And the topic context can then contain a number of things. This is also very important also to when augmenting the AI. So the context seems to be very important so that the AI also can learn what this is all about. But a topic context could contain, for example, who is this topic written for? What kind of knowledge is assumed? What product model, version, and component is this topic valid for? Is that valid for a forklift version and a set of components? What previous tasks, tools, and personnel are assumed? And previous task is very interesting. A standalone topic supports the user to accomplish one goal, one user goal. So stopping the forklift, stopping something assumes that you have started it. So from the context, we can then provide links to starting the forklift. And starting something might imply that something you have entered it. So there is a dependency of tasks. We can provide the user with the relations or the links to the previous task to things that has been assumed. We can also include safety precautions. What user goal does this topic support the user in accomplishing? And what is the result of doing this task? What is the situation before and after? What are the overall steps? How long time does it take to do it? Yeah. So this is typically things that would be in a topic context. And I guess you are doing this already, this type of. I think this can be called an advanced organizer or a pre-training section, some literature. But very important both for the human and for the AI, for standalone topic design. We can also have, of course, have links to support the descriptive content. Okay, yeah, metadata is needed also. Maybe I don't need to talk too much about that. That's will be self-evident. But in this case, if this would be a standalone topic, I have examples of 7 basic taxonomies: user role, skill level, the information type. So the text in blue here, that's the metadata that is associated with this topic. What task type is it? What type of component does it relate to? You can use the product's bill of material to create a product structure. What product is it valid for? And what version or model year that product? So an example of 7 kind of basic taxonomies we can use. And of course, there are other types of metadata standards. You probably heard about the IRDS, the German standard for request and delivery service, which creates this RDF ecosystem of metadata for managing topics like this. So, assuming that the content is written as standalone topics and it has metadata, we need in a way to support the user to do this auto-filtering. So one approach, one idea is to use the content delivery portal, which can be online, offline, which contains all the standalone topics. So 1 to 18, each of these boxes is a standalone topic. And each topic has the metadata, as you saw on the previous slide. And this can be managed in a CCMS, of course. It can be published and uploaded. So the idea here is not to produce kind of order-specific or situational specific content from the CCMS, rather publish everything and let the filtering happen on the client side. But what is interesting here is that, let's say that content is, the information architecture here is standalone topic design. We can still organize that content into book structures. Of course. I would say that my experience is that the context is interesting. To provide a context for each standalone topic when they are organized in a book structure might or might not. Well, that depends on the information architecture. Some parts of the context probably needs to be hidden when it's part of a book content. Anyhow, a user who is using a specific product configuration, we know about the order information, the product configuration information, or the license information. So we can use that to only show the user the standalone topics that are relevant for this in a given situation. So we're showing the user these green standalone topics, not the other. The user can still zoom out if they would like to see content that is relevant for other types of products and users. And of course, to achieve this kind of auto-filtering, there can be a number of ways of doing it. We're exploring using AI to do this, but then kind of a technique that has been around for many years, and it's kind of robust, is faceted search. We can use that. So let's look at a faceted search example. If this will be the standalone topics in the CDP, so each box is a standalone topic, and I'll try to visualize the metadata using these icons, color, shape, and size. So we have the type of forklift model, type of battery, and type of information. So faceted search will means that this metadata can be visualized to the user as filter. So if the user selects, then we hide all topics that are relevant for other product models. If the user selects type of battery, we hide all the topics that are relevant for other batteries, etc. This technique, of course, you're using that almost every day in e-commerce sites when picking and selecting products. So it's nothing new in that sense, but it's interesting we can use that to technical documentation. So the user can cut and slice the content as they wish by selecting these filters, creating their own mini manual. So we can apply that to the relevant content delivery. So a user who is engaging with a specific product configuration, we are loading the configuration and we remove everything not relevant. So users only get a subset, and they can still use the facets to search and select. So that's what I showed you in the beginning in the example, using this technique. So it's kind of, I wouldn't say simple, but it works, I would say, pretty well for, maybe not for large scale documentation, then probably you would use another technique, but for limited set of content, this works very well. Okay, let's wrap up and look at additional thing we can do in the same perspective. So if this is the timeline for this forklift, this can be 15 years in normal operation. Of course, the state of this product or the configuration of this product changes over the course of its lifetime. Maybe there is a software function deactivated by the administrator at some point in time. And that, of course, has a consequence of impact on the content within the topic. So if a software function is deactivated, maybe we need to hide a specific step in the instruction. So we can use this way of filtering things also within topic content, so that the content is always aligned to the actual state of the product. So let's say that there's a low tire pressure. So instead of saying, if there is a low tire pressure, do this, it says, it is a low tire pressure, do this. And we can also present runtime values such as the speed of an engine. And of course, we can also use, we're also exploring to use AI to regenerate content based on the knowledge about the product state as such. So AI is used as a tool in various parts of the process to achieve certain things, where it's relevant to use the AI as a tool. So this is something that we are exploring. So what it means is that we need somebody to conditionalize content, not for the purpose of single sourcing, but for the purpose of filtering the content depending on the product state. So this is another level of perhaps complexity. So we need to use conditions both to achieve single sourcing and conditions to use product state auto filtering. So that's I'm not sure how that will exactly work. So we are learning how to achieve this using AI, for example. Okay, cool, thanks. So time for questions.